Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people.
You cannot shake hands with a clenched fist.
Produced by a nuclear exchange would be carried by wind and water and soil and seed to the far corners of
the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We're not saying that planet Earth is coming to an end. We're saying that planet Earth is about to be refurbished, spaded under, and have another chance to serve as a garden for another civilization.
Most of the people in here are just your reflections. They're your mistakes.
1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms.
1 million of the planet's 8 million species are threatened.
You are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence ought to be a habit, not an act.
Your lives and the credibility of the United Nations is at stake.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
The reason this is such an interesting time is not only because we're on the threshold of the end of this civilization.
They're trying to take you out with bullshit.
The experience of the past 2 years has proven beyond doubt that no nation can appease the Nazis.
To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
In the language of the U.S. Department of Defense, these are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Roswell's a very interesting place with a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
This is the Garden of Doom.
Welcome everyone into Garden of Doom. And this week we have a returning guest, which we love having returning guests. This is M.G. Stevens, the author of the Boogeyman Chronicles. There's an earlier episode of this very podcast called The Boogeyman Chronicles, so you can check that if you like. Even better yet, buy the book. Fill in the blanks with your own imagination. That's always a lot more fun, and probably you can put more layers on it. But we're lucky enough to have MG back again. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Good. How's the weather out there in Hollywood? I know that you're a Hollywood, and everyone in Hollywood's a Hollywood big shot, so you're a Hollywood big shot.
Right. I wish. Yeah. It's been kind of gloomy and cold and kind of gray the last few days. But it's supposed to warm up in a few days. It's supposed to get up to 92, I think.
Well, my good friend Albert Hammond told me that it never rains in Southern California.
Well, it does on occasion.
Huh. Well, he lied about a few things, including his career.
Yeah.
You remember that song, right? No, you're not.
Yes, I remember that song, yeah.
Okay. I'm wondering if you're old enough to know that song. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole song's about he went to Hollywood, didn't quite make it, and ran into someone he knew, and he asked them to lie to everyone back home and say that he made it big. Anyway, enough about that. So in our last episode, part of your story was that for a while you looked towards other faiths and other religions to sort of help you through troubling times, to maybe fill a void or, to help explain whatever. The same reason everyone goes to religions, for comfort and understanding. And it just so happens these are religions that I know very little about and I'm curious about. And when I first started doing this show, when it transitioned into a solo show, one of my first episodes was on voodoo and the similarities. And I think I did a pretty good job of it, but it was a solo show and they stink. Or at least I think they stink. I don't like doing solo shows. I prefer to have a guest. And because it was one of the first ones, I'm sure it was particularly robotic. So I'm very happy to have you on the show who actually studied and delved into Voodoo and Santeria. And I think you said maybe a couple of other related religions, because there's every island sort of has its own variant, and I know that's a bad word these days in virus, but it's the word has a plain English meaning, but also in parts of Mexico and South America and Belize, and so well, this is your show, so why don't you tell us where you started, and if you can, we'll sort of try to do an outline-ish form, by keeping it human, like which religion, what attracted you to it, its basic tenets, and go.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm not an expert, so I can't really comment on a whole lot, but I can tell you my own personal experience. Like we talked about before, there's definitely a correlation between neurodivergence and ESP. Not every neurodivergent person is highly sensitive, intuitive, but a lot are, and it's enough to take note of that. And there's a lot of studies going on and whatnot, but there's also a correlation between neurodivergent people and being attracted to alternative religion. There's a lot of autistic witches out there. There's a lot of ADHD people who are attracted to alternative religions. Basically, my story is, I was autistic and had ADHD, didn't know it until I was much older. But when I was a kid, my mother, who was also neurodivergent, she grew up in a religious southern town, hellfire damnation, the Southern Baptist, you're going to hell and all this. I mean, just horrible stuff. So she grew up terrified of God and any sort of organized religion. So she wasn't really religious, didn't go to church. She moved to California to live with her sister and brother-in-law. And her brother-in-law was a Presbyterian minister, so she had to kind of go to church. But it was different. But still, it was she was not happy about it. But that was part of it. She had to go to church. So when she left there, she vowed she would never go to church again. So when we moved to Arizona, we lived in Arizona. This was right before I was born. My mom wasn't pregnant yet, but her friend told her, she said, "Oh, go to this psychic lady. She's great." So my mom went to this psychic lady, palm reader type person. And my mom was like, she said, when I walked in, I didn't know what to expect, because this lady was like, no offense to anybody, but she was just sweaty, hairy armpits, dirty kids running around screaming. She was just like, what the hell is this? But this lady was spot on with everything. In fact, she said, you're going to have another baby and it's going to be a daddy's girl. So she foretold me, told her that my dad was going to get a transfer. And my mom was like, oh, that's impossible. My husband doesn't have enough credits for this transfer, but my dad got it. So anyway, my mom then started to get really interested in alternative religions. At that point, she started to realize that she was also psychic. And so, I then was born and they moved to the South. My father got that transfer and moved to the South. And my mother started settling into this new neighborhood. And she had a friend who said, oh, you should, we some of the ladies around here, we go to this psychic development class and you should really go. And so my mother started going to this psychic development class, and she started to really delve into her own gifts of, ESP, whatever you want to call it. But I mean, she was highly sensitive, and my mother had just tons and tons of notebooks where she would make predictions and they would come to pass. She even foretold an assassination attempt on Gerald Ford. She knew he was going to get close assassination attempt by squeaking from.
Well, let's tell the kids who Gerald Ford is.
He's the president.
That's right.
President.
He was Nixon's vice president, so he was the president after Watergate. Wasn't elected, ran for re-election against Jimmy Carter, who I think pretty much everyone knows, and was defeated. And probably Chevy Chase made his career off of imitating Gerald Ford, who famously tripped once going up or down steps to an airplane, and Chevy Chase made a career out of being Gerald Ford and falling all over the place, being like the first Kramer.
Yeah, drove for it. Chevy Chase just was falling all over everything, every time, everywhere. It's like, it wasn't that much, but anyway. So my mom knew that. She foretold that. She was really terrifyingly accurate, scary accurate. So anyway, my mother was going to these psychic development classes, and she got so good that after my divorcing my dad and getting custody of me and everything, we moved to another place down the street. She started holding readings in our home, and of course I wasn't allowed to be there, so I was banished to the back room, but I would sneak my head around the corner and I would listen, and she was very, very good. And in my book I described about how she was helping me at one point when I was starting to have these really terrifying reoccurring nightmares. But having alternative religions was not something I grew up with, believe it or not. Even with my mother being a psychic and her studying, she was not in a religion, if you will. She was just a free agent. She did what she did, and that was it. She studied trance work. She did this, she did that, but she was no religion. Because a lot of people, when I tell them my mother was a psychic, they immediately assume she was a witch. And I was like, no. She was not a witch. My mother never did a spell. She never did anything. My mom was really so powerful that she just would sit there and think about something and she'd get it. I mean, it was just crazy. So that was not something I grew up with. And
did she have any of the, I know this isn't the topic at all, but did she have any of the dream visitations or the dream psychic? Like, Edgar Cayce is sort of the famous, dream psychic. He dreamed of Atlantis and things like that. Did she have any experiences like that she relayed to you?
I'm sure she did, but I never really heard about those. I just, the one that I knew about was the one that she astral traveled in her sleep. My oldest sibling was in California. We were on the East Coast, and I don't know if I told this story before, but my oldest sibling, and their partner had a baby, and my mother was such a mom and such a grandma. She was so happy that she really wanted to see her new grandchild. So my mom went to bed one night just wishing and hoping, and then all of a sudden she gets a call the next morning, and she doesn't have a dream. There's no dream. There's no nothing. She literally, the next morning there's a phone call, and my sibling's on the phone going, "Mom, you were here last night." And she's like, "What are you talking about?" My mom was like, "Come on, I've been here. What do you mean?" And my middle sibling's like, or my oldest sibling said, No, Mom, you were here. Me and such partner were sleeping in bed, and then all of a sudden, the baby's crib was at the foot of the bed, and I woke up, and you walked into the room, and you checked on the baby. I could see you as plain as day. You checked on the baby. You checked on me and so partner, and then you just left the room. You walked out.
Wow.
And
can I interject for a second? Because I mean, I was going to say that this show's not about me, but I mean, this show sort of, it's not about any of this yet, but we're going to get there. But this story that you just told, I feel like I have to, because anybody who's been listening to the show, for a long time, knows that I'm not a religious person. And maybe I give off the impression that I'm spiritual, maybe not, but at least that I'm open-minded, or at least can make a pretense that I am. But I don't really reveal all that much about myself, or at least I don't think I do. Maybe listening back, I'd find out that statement's a complete lie. But I absolutely believe the story that you just told me. I'm going to tell you why, because I experienced almost the same thing myself directly. And I really don't believe in much of anything necessarily, or at least nothing that it's sort of an accepted dogma. Anyway, let's stick to this. So I'm divorced, but of course that means I was married. I have 2 kids. My oldest is almost 22. But of course he was a baby, and you had baby monitors. So anyway, one night I had a dream about my grandfather. Now, neither of my kids ever met either of my grandfathers, because both of them died in the 80s. My youngest was born in 2000, so pretty easy to do that math there. Now, both my grandmothers lived past that, so my kids had met their great-grandmothers, one more than the other, but they might hear his him being referenced as great grandpa or Poppy. We called him Poppy. I doubt they ever heard his first name, which is Jesse. And I doubt they would remember it because I don't think my oldest one, I think, was 4 when this grandmother passed. So anyway, all this is to say that they didn't have any serious exposure to my grandfather. He had been long past by this time. So it's not like my grandmother was, living in the past and talking about him all the time. Anyway, so one night I had a dream about my grandfather, and I woke up and the baby monitor was going staticky, like crazy staticky, like there was electric discharge. Now, this happens sometimes with baby monitors when another signal goes by, but I don't remember anyone being that loud before. And then they heard something Poppy. And he definitely said Poppy. Now, listen, he was probably around 2.5. He had words. Some of his words were words only that we could understand. Sometimes it was like Wawa. I knew in context that what Wawa meant. It meant water in one context to melt, Elmo in one context, and it meant something else in the other. I can't remember that far back. But he said something Poppy. And so he went into the room, and he's asleep like he had a dream. No one's in the room. And we heard some other noise. And we're not the type to run in, or anything like that. So the next day we talked to him, and his name is Jake. We said, Jake, how you doing today? He goes, I'm doing great. I said, really? Yeah. Poppy visited me last night. I go, Poppy visited you last night? So now we're freaking out. I'm freaking out. And I'm like, what do you say? He goes, oh, he just wanted to say that he's watching me and that he's glad I'm doing great and he's doing fine and he's really happy. And he just wanted to make sure I was doing okay. And I said, well, what'd you tell me? He said, I'm doing great, because he's 4 or he's 2.5. Of course he's doing great. He's doing great or he's doing terrible, depending on, if Winnie the Pooh and Tigger are still in the crib with him. But this happened, and this is real, and this is very similar to your story, except, I heard it from the child, but also heard some of it myself and had the dream myself, all in the same time. It's almost like when Howard Carter's dog howled as he died. It was just one of those weird things. So I absolutely believe in ghosts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's too much evidence. There's too many stories. This is why I started my own podcast. There's so many stories, so many people. Skeptics say, oh, blah, blah, blah. And they poo-poo everything. And it's like, have you heard some of people's stories? Have you heard all the stories? There's so many stories. Everybody I know has at least one weird encounter, whether it was I thought I heard something, or like your story where it's like, no, I definitely, like my kids definitely had an encounter, or me who's had a lifetime of encounters. Everybody on this planet has had some kind of weird experience that maybe they don't even know was weird, or maybe they didn't notice it. But the paranormal is all around us, and I think we eventually, if you haven't had a weird experience, you will have one at some point. You know what I mean? Because you're going to hit those areas of high strangeness, or it's just going to be around you. You have relatives that have passed on, and how do you know they're not around you until they, make themselves known? So I'm just a firm believer that everybody on this planet either has or will have some sort of strange encounter that they can't explain. It's just, it is what it is, But but this is what happened to my mom. She was alive and well. Didn't even try. And she knew how to astral project. She would study that kind of thing, but she didn't even try. That was the weird thing. She was like, I wasn't even trying to do that. I just went to bed really hoping and wishing I could see my grandkids. She was really heartbroken, and so that was that experience. So my mom, again, was not a religion. Just like a lot of us, she just didn't go to church. She didn't do anything like that. If she went to church, she went to like a Unity church, but it was kind of like a New Agey church. She would go there if there was a speaker or something. But she was very happy with her life, and she was doing her own thing. And I was not exposed to that. Some people had the kind of life where they were, exposed to a religion early on, something that followed them throughout their whole lives. My mom never sat me down and taught me how to read people or anything like that. She did what she did, and I just happened to be around, And like I said, I had a lifetime of paranormal activity because I guess I just have that antenna that's up. Again, the neurodivergent thing, I think is a clue. But anyway, I was about 4 or 5 years old when my mother, there was a lady named Patty who I wish to God my mother had never met, but she started talking to my mom about Christianity and started introducing her to a lot of stuff. My mom was at kind of a low point in her life where she had hit a few snags, and I guess it all kind of converged. And so she, kind of got to a place where she, made the decision to become a Christian. And so that's the religion that I kind of grew up in. I was about 4 or 5, 6, somewhere around there. But it was something, I'm bringing this up because it was something that my own gut, I don't know what it was. Call me a demon child. I don't know. But I mean, there was something that my own gut was really against. And I even told my mom, I said, don't do this. Don't do this Christian stuff. It's not good. And I don't know why I said that. I mean, I was all of 4 or 5, when I was talking to her, but I just had a really bad feeling.
And there might just be that vein of Christianity, that particular interpretation of it was not good for her.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and so but I just had a weird feeling. I don't know why I was very much against it. And she was talking about God and talking about this. And I guess maybe I was meant to be a pagan from birth. I don't know, but she just constantly, she was talking about God, talking about church. She would go to church and I watched Christian television, a lot of that stuff. And I just kept saying, Mom, I don't like this stuff. I don't think it's good. And, not to say it was God. I'm not trashing Christianity. I don't like the culty fundamentalist Jesus camp stuff, that I grew up in, but she would watch a lot of Christian television, and I just kind of felt, Mom, this isn't good. And her life kind of went downhill even worse after that. So I kind of felt like she had, in my opinion, had hit a snag in life and thought that Jesus was, the answer. And then, it really wasn't, she just kind of, it just went downhill further from there. So, I don't know.
How old were you around this time? Were you a teenager, younger, older?
No, I was about 4 or 5 years old.
Wow. So it was like on a granular level.
Yeah, it was just something in my gut. My mom tried to talk to me about God and Christianity, and like I said, the Christian television was on and stuff like that, and I would try to watch it, and I was very averse to it. I just did not like it. It was just something really awful that hit my gut, and was just like, I don't like this. I don't know what this is, but I don't like it. I don't know. Maybe I saw through the televangelist, the 80s failed fall from grace evangelist. Maybe I was seeing through that. I don't know.
Right, the Jim Bakkers, the Jerry Falwells.
Like a Jim Bakker type. Because she used to watch the PTL stuff, and I was like, ooh, God, no. I said, and I was like 4 or 5 years old, but I kept telling my mom, I don't like this. I don't like this. Turn it off. So I, again, didn't really have a lot of religion in my life. I mean, my father's second wife and her mother, we would go to Episcopalian church like twice a year, Christmas and Easter. And then my father remarried again, and this lady was Southern Baptist. So we went to, every few Sundays we would go to church, Southern Baptist church. And it was just, again, I'm sitting there like, what am I doing? I hate this place. I hate this whole thing. Just not into it. My mother at this point was still a Christian. I was, probably like 12, 13, and she's still going to church, and she's still, and every time I go see her on the weekend, because I would live with my father at this point, it was just like, oh God, this is terrible. And she would, I would have to go to church because she was going to church. She would look forward to it. So I had to go, and it was just, again, not happy. So I then went to live with my mom. All of this is in the book, by the way, but I went to live with my mom at 14. And I had really bad experiences. I just come from an abusive home. I was not happy with my life. I was very physically sick. I was emotionally and mentally reeling from living in 6 years in an abusive home. I was traumatized. I had a lot of PTSD. And one day I had this really horrible anxiety attack. And I became a Christian. And I was very much against my will. I was like, oh God, what did I just do? So my mom and I, went to church, and my heart was never in it. I would go, and I was just like, okay, I'll do this. And then I did that for years and years and years, and nothing improved. They always say, pray, Jesus will make it better. And I'm not saying Jesus isn't, I had a dream about Jesus when I was a kid, and it was a cool dream. But it just, as a whole, was not helping me. So by the time I got to my early 20s, I thought I better start changing things, because I had been chronically ill for years. I had been plagued by agoraphobia. I was plagued by depression. I was neurodivergent, had no idea why. I wish I had found out then. That would have helped a lot. But, my life was in shambles. And the spirituality that I had been, this Christianity, this churchy Christianity stuff was not working. It was not making my life better. It was not bringing any peace. And I was at a very low point in my life. And I realized in my early 20s, I thought, if I don't get my crap together on all fronts, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it out of my 20s, because I was very ill. So I started to improve my life mentally, emotionally, physically, everything. Started to do everything I could within my power at that time to make my life better. And that meant my spirituality as well.
Sure.
So I kind of got real serious about my life. And I thought, okay, no offense to Jesus, no offense to, anyone else that loves Jesus, but this isn't for me. And so I sat down one day, I was like 2004. I just gotten a computer. And I remember thinking, what do I like? What do I want to do? What, spirituality, I was already doing the new, diet and taking this vitamin, doing this thing physically, but spiritually, I had to sit there and take stock. And I thought, what do I like? What do I, and I always thought, what, since I was a kid, I always felt pulled to something different, something not mainstream, and definitely something not Christian. So I kept wondering, why was I so pulled to that? And at this point I accepted, okay, I'm a psychic, I'm a medium. I hear things, I know things. So I thought, maybe I was a witch in another life, what I mean? I started thinking on those terms, those links, maybe I was a witch, maybe blah, blah, blah. And I actually had a vision of my mother, because my mother would read me on occasion, but she was like, well, read me. And I was like, oh, I can't do that. And she goes, no, you can't. And so I started reading her one day, and I had this vision of her as a witch. And she, back in, I would say, dark ages, Iron Age, Dark Age, sort of like very, very, like a long, long time ago back, because she was part European. So she had Irish, English, Scottish blood. And so I kept seeing this image of this woman who was a very powerful witch of like her tribe, in England, in the UK. And there was a warlock that wanted to harness her powers. And he kind of took her hostage and kind of said, I'm going to hurt your family if you don't do work for me against my enemies. And I saw her being utterly tormented about this, because the woman in the vision that I saw my mom as, was all for healing and good and all this, but this guy made her do all these bad things. So my mother's shocked. She reels back in shock, and she's like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what some sort of guru that she was following in the 80s had told her, the exact same vision. And so that was interesting. But so I kind of thought about those things, well, maybe I really was a witch, and that's why I had such an aversion to Christianity. I was maybe in many lifetimes I was a happy little pagan, and I was kind of forced into being a Christian. So, and this life included. So I then started to think along those lines, and I thought, well, let me try Wicca. Let me see, what Wicca's all about, witchcraft. Sure. And I was terrified. I mean, you got to realize I've had, 15 plus years at this point of religious programming in my head. And as much as I tried to ignore a lot of that stuff and kind of keep my own thoughts, and be a free thinker, I still was so terrified of the Christian, oh my gosh, if you do, you do anything witchcraft, you're going to get struck by lightning or something, So here I was on my little computer that I had just gotten, and Google, I don't think was even a thing then. So I had to do like
Bing.
and all of that stuff. Yeah, Bing and Yahoo maybe. It was a long time ago. So here I am trying to look up stuff, and I get a witchcraft Bible of witchcraft, witchcraft Bible, I guess you would call it, and
a grimoire, an e-grimoire.
Yeah. I was trying to, like I said, I was like terrified, but I got it, and I was just like, okay, I have this book. What do I do with it now? But I let my gut guide me.
Web grimoire. That seems like a business opportunity, but I think someone must have thought about it already.
Right.
I learned a little bit about witchcraft, and I don't even want to tell another story because we'll take too much time. But it also okay. So I interviewed, and she's gracious enough that she's agreed to come on again. But she is a witch, and she's taught me a bunch about witchcraft and other things. And also she had a sense of humor. I mean, sometimes when you first meet someone and you don't know if you can joke around with it or not, because sometimes it offends people, and I tend to be a little sarcastic anyway, a little dry. So, I was on my best behavior, but when I realized she has a sense of humor, the interview got better. Anyway, somehow that audio got lost. Now, normally when there's audio that's lost, it's 99% user error on my part, because I am a tech idiot. It's amazing that I can even get this thing produced. And I wouldn't if it wasn't for my fiance, La Sicaria, who is, as far as I consider, a tech wizard. Now she's probably just pretty good at it, but to me, it's like, it's like I don't know. What am I?
Different levels of expertise.
Right. It's like a squirrel looking at someone in a kitchen going, wow, why can't I do that? Making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So anyway, I actually had a friend of mine who is a tech wizard go into my computer. He's like, yeah, I see it. I see the audio file. I see the other audio files. Are you sure this is it? Like, yes, I did it that day. And he's like, yeah, it's like it's like someone hacked your computer and took only that audio file away. It's like, because you don't lose anything. I mean, first of all, we didn't use Zoom or Skype, but we used Facebook, FaceTime, which doesn't save anything. So there was no backup, which is a little bit convenient. But Adobe was working. You see, I mean, for those of you who don't know Adobe, it's basically what you would see on, any studio set. The lines go up and down. They're in green. Right now, I can look at that screen. I see they're in green. When you hit pause or stop or whatever, they turn to gray. They were all there. That was it. It was stopped in the normal way. It can, as long as you don't turn your computer off, and probably if you do, it's saved in some form anyway. But no matter what, it's saved on your hard drive. I mean, we all know nothing on the internet is lost. So either someone hacked me and was only looking for that, which is absurd, because why would they? Or there was some type of witchcraft which removed only that file. So I said to her, do you have a nemesis or anyone that's against you that might have even thought about doing that knew you were going to record? And she's like, we'll talk about it later, which is almost certainly a yes. Yeah. But so we're going to talk in. So anyway, that was a long little story to say I sort of believe in witchcraft too. Only to say that I absolutely believe that there are energies out there that some people are able to harness or be, I think it's science. It's just some people are able to harness different energies in different way. No different than some people are more sensitive to light or sound. The people who name that tune on half a note, they're more sensitive to sound, whatever it is. Everyone has skills. So here's what she taught me. So Wicca is the religion of witches, but not all Wicca are witches, but not all witches are Wiccan. She also taught me that there are different types of Wicca, just like other religions. There are sects and denominations, and some of the disputes are more material than others, just like other religions. That a warlock is actually sort of a bad word. It's not a male witch, which is what I was led to believe growing up, from cartoons or whatever. That it's actually someone with evil intent. So the story you told that they were trying to kidnap your mother to take the powers in your dream, that makes sense. That's entirely consistent with evil as opposed to, just a witch. Also, under the druids are sort of similar, but it's not exactly the same. But since there's not a lot of data or written history of druids. Maybe they were. It's not entirely clear, but druids, shamans, and then Wicca and animists, there's all some overlap in relationship. Probably at some point there's a mitochondrial Eve for that too. And then there's really no difference between a sorcerer and a wizard. But, then she also told me a little bit about voodoo, hoodoo, Sandries, and Santeria. And I'm like, I had no idea that some of these things exist. I thought hoodoo was just a way of saying voodoo, like voodoo schmoodoo. Nope.
No.
It's something else. So that's my little story about why I believe that there's at least some type of witchcraft, witches can be powerful, and the little bit that I know about witchcraft, and that's probably about it. Everything else I know is from the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Dr. Fate in DC.
Well, to echo the tech issues, I mean, I could tell you story after story. I interviewed Terry Lovelace, who, if you don't know, is the fellow that went through the incident at Devil's Den, and he had a lifetime of encounters. And we interviewed him, and I've interviewed a handful of other guests on my podcast, and I'm telling you right now, he had the most tech issues. And I said, "What is with the tech issues with you?" And because we interviewed him on several occasions, and he, to get his whole story, and he told me, he said, "Oh, no, tech issues follow me." And it's to like an extreme creepy amount. Like they really follow him. And with me, I've done a few podcasts that I've had to reschedule over the last couple of months promoting the book, because I was talking to one fella who is more of a UFO guy. So I was talking to him, and he freaked out. He was like, "Wait a minute," because we did like an hour's worth of work, and then we took a break, and he went to review, and I came back, and he said, "This is really weird. I can't seem to get your audio, and I've done everything the same. I've done like 38, 39 shows, and I've never had this kind of problem." So, tech issues are starting to follow me. They never did before, because I never really did a lot of podcasts. I did a few of them. But now that I'm starting to talk about paranormal PTSD and starting to talk about, people need to get their stories out and stuff like that. Maybe something out there doesn't like that. I don't know. But I've had a lot of encounters, like handful so far in the last couple of months, where I have been talking, and the camera won't turn on. The audio won't work. The audio, for some reason, so strangely, just won't work. And I would do this whole interview and nothing. They were like, "We don't know what's happening. This is the first time this has ever happened."
Well, so it's not just you and me. I will tell you another quick one. I had a guest on, Reverend Jim Willis. He's a prolific writer, and he's been a minister for 40 years. And he's going to be on. He's one of my favorite guests because he's so well spoken and he's so nice, and he knows so much. And he actually wrote a book called The Religion Book. But he was on because he had just written a book called Censoring God, which is excellent. And he told me, he said, "I've had 12 or 13 podcasts which we were not able to do because the tech just wouldn't work, only on this podcast. And I've been doing podcasts my own or being a guest. I'm not sure if he does his own, but I know he's had his YouTube channel and whatever. And, and he said, only when promoting this show." So I do think, I had a guest on probably a year ago named Leo Zagami, who really believes that the internet, that the New World Order and Satan is in the internet. And he goes in directions that are, beyond what I want to even, think is correct. But I have no doubt that technology is particularly vulnerable to those kinds of sensitivities if they're harnessed correctly, because malware and spyware and virusware doesn't protect against whatever this is. It's almost like, I don't know, in like every superhero or story, there's always the one person who can talk to technology, like Cyborg could go right into technology. Mm-hmm. There's always the one that can talk to technology. I think that
spiritually, demons or entities, whatever you want to call it. I mean, how many stories have we had where, someone gets a phone call and there's a demon voice on the other end, or someone looks at their computer and there's some, horrible thing going across the computer. You know what I mean? Like, so, entities can manipulate technology. You know what I mean? So
listen to Isaac Asimov told us that in I, Robot, and people talked about it beforehand as well. But I mean, the Police, the group, they had an album called Ghost in the Machine. Well, there weren't that many machines back then. I mean, so pretty prophetic. Anyway, I think I've hijacked my own show on this and sidetracked it. So okay, I think where we left off is that you started turning to Wicca. So let's talk about that.
I started delving just into anything at this point. I was just like, well, let me try Wicca, because I don't know where to start, and I didn't know anything. So I got the grimoire, and I'm reading it, and it just wasn't clicking with me. And nothing against Wiccans. I love them. I have a lot of Wiccan friends, and I think maybe at some point I maybe will do a little bit of Wiccan, this and that, because I mean there's so much there.
I hope so. So you can refer me some. So because I'd like to learn more about that.
I haven't. There's so much there in every sort of religion that I haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg. But for me at that time, it just wasn't clicking. It was a little too gray for me. It was a little too like, do what you feel. And I needed something at that point in my life that was very hard and fast, black or white. Do this, don't do this, blah, blah, blah. So I started, I needed structure. I needed something that was much more, structure. So anyway, I started to read about Voodoo and Santeria. Now, to me, I was always told this is devil worship. Oh my God, how could you do this? And so I was terrified to even look it up on my computer. But something kept telling me, I kept feeling like this sort of the hands pressing me on, and so I kept looking, and there wasn't much on the, internet at that time, but there was a few ebooks here and there, something from Dr. Snake. He's a voodoo guy from, England. So, there was lots of different books. So I would get every book I could. And the more I read about Voodoo and Santeria, the more it resonated with me, the more it was just like, it felt like a warm hug. It felt like all my ancestors kind of came out and said, hey, welcome back, and I was like, oh, wow, this is something. And it really filled me with a lot of peace. It gave me a sense of control over my life that I haven't had ever. And it was just something that was, comforting. And it felt right. It just felt right. You do something, you get somewhere, you do something, you're with someone, or you delve into something and it just feels right. You can't explain it. You just know you're in the right place. And that's kind of what happened. And I've been practicing Voodoo and Santeria as much as I can as a, lone practitioner. And then I got a Padrino a few years later. But I'm very happy. I'm very happy with it. It's filled me with a lot of peace. And like I said, that sense of control, because when life has been so chaotic, you want something that you can turn to that, what's religion for? Here we are humans in this human experience, freaking out because, the money's low, or we lost the job, or the house, or this happened, or the blah, 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 we're sick or something. And so we are constantly looking to something for help. And so anything that gives you a sense of control and peace over your life, you're going to cling to that, like refuge in a storm, and that's kind of what I did. At that time, I had, experienced no control over my life and circumstances. And finally, Voodoo and Santeria gave me that I, I never really had. So it gave me a lot of peace. And it's been very smooth sailing since then. I've done a lot of spells. For some reason, I do really good with breakup spells, which I don't really want to do. But if someone is very detrimental, like if, people come to me and say, oh, my son or daughter is dating this horrible person, they're very abusive and they can't seem to get out of it, can you break them up for me? I can do that.
Well, that seems like something you should be able to monetize. But I think this is a good time to step back for a second and just tell us, give us a brief definition, or not so brief, as to what is voodoo, what is Santeria, what are the differences, if any. And you use the word padrino. I'm assuming that's like a padre, like the reverend or the priest, but I don't know that to be the case. So if you can just do some basic definitions and some of the tenets, that I think that would help us for us to have a structure so that we understand you going forward. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't feel like I know much, but I tell you what I do know, and what I've read, and what I've been told, and what I've seen. So there is a mother religion in Africa called Efa And Efa is kind of where Voodoo and Santeria come from. And so what happens is, this is what I was told and read, that the French, stole Africans from Africa, and they took them to Haiti and to Louisiana that they owned. And that with, the Efa under the French Catholicism, the native, the indigenous population of, Haiti and Louisiana turned into voodoo. It morphed into voodoo. Now you've got Haitian voodoo, but you also have New Orleans voodoo, and those are slightly different. They have different things. It would take way too long to get into. But if you ever take a trip to New Orleans and you go to the French Quarter and you go to all the voodoo shops, that's your New Orleans voodoo. And a lot of people in New Orleans have been ordained in Haiti. You really have to be ordained in Haiti. So anyway, there's that. And then the Spanish that stole Africans from Africa, that form, that Efa, they then, took them to all the Spanish-owned countries. So that then became Santeria. And so, and then, mixed with the Spanish Catholicism, mixed with the indigenous communities of, the Caribbean and Central America, South America, turned into Santeria, but also turned into different forms of Santeria. There's Palo Mayombe, there's Candomblé, there's all different offshoots of Santeria that, focus on different things. And that's a lot. Again, it's all out there. So if you ever really are interested, you'll have more information than I ever did when you're searching, because now we have Google and it's all out there. So definitely look all of this up because it's so interesting. But what I loved about Efa and Voodoo and Santeria is that it is a religion that is so loved and so cherished and has been so protected, over the millennia, that it's survived. It survived. It may have morphed. It's morphed from Efa. There's similarities, definitely, but it has morphed to accommodate their situation. So you have these folks, mixing with, these African enslaved people, mixing their beloved religion in with all this stuff just to protect it. They instead of praying to Chango, they would have a Catholic mask, if you will, over it to protect it, so that their slave owner, their slave master, would say, "Oh, look at how pious my slave is. He's praying to Saint Barbara." Well, they had to. Chango and Saint Barbara have the same qualities, so they meshed kind of those two, and kind of. So now you see a lot of Catholicism in Efa, the mother religion, because it had to be hidden. Right. And so here's a statue of Saint Barbara, but this, enslaved African person is really praying to Chango. Right. And so, you know what I mean? So that's what I love about it so much. It was like, wow, these people love their religion, that they hid it and preserved it and protected it.
And this is
now what we have, yeah.
And this is really nothing new for religions, except it's like a reversal of the fortune line. Typically, the conquerors come in and sort of put their religions on top. So, I mean, everybody knows that the Roman religion basically took everything from the Greeks and just put their names on it. I think a bunch of people know that the Greeks took a lot from the Egyptians and the Canaanites, and no one's really sure who came first or whatever. But a lot of these, characters are the same, just with different names. But it's usually the stronger power going in, taking and saying, we want to assimilate these cultures, these people, these economies, these soldiers into our world. So sure, they can have their Zeus, but they need to call it Jupiter. And we'll take some of their qualities of Zeus and mostly our qualities of Jupiter. They're pretty close anyway. Good enough. And after a time, it's sort of indistinguishable except for the most erudite of scholars. But what happened here is that the oppressed, the people who were conquered, sort of outsmarted the powered class and said, well, we want to use the name Chango Achanga. Said we want to work, and I know that, I mean, Santeria basically came from the worship of saints. I mean, that was the ultimate trick right there. They rebranded it. But they took saints that were close enough because, in monotheism, we're definitely not worshiping anyone but God, except we worship relics and saints, the Virgin Mary, and this and that, and the other. In some places, Mary Magdalene. In some places, some apostles and the angels and this. So they took things that were acceptable and used that name. So it was like the reverse. They just, I don't even know if they knew the history or not, but they took, again, they jujitsu, they kung fu'd it, they reversed the momentum.
Exactly. They did what they did in order to survive. They knew this religion was important. This kept them going, and so they knew they had to protect it. And that's what I loved about Voodoo and Santeria and Efa. It was the love of this religion, that they protected it so much. And there's a lot of secrecy in Voodoo and Santeria that you don't, there's a lot of stuff that unless you're initiated, you don't know. You don't know about it because it's so well protected. And thank God, or whoever, thank the universe, thank these wonderful people for doing that, because now we have this very lovely, wonderful, powerful religion that helps people. And that's one of the first things I failed to mention that I really want to mention is this is not devil worship. And you have Hollywood's version of voodoo, and it's really ruined it for a lot of people, because people now think, oh, this is, I even had a person who was a Wiccan, who I told him, I said, well, no, I practice Voodoo and Santeria. And she goes, oh, that's devil worship. And I'm like, I didn't think you believed in a devil, but it's reached into that level of it. You know what I mean? And it's just like, wow, a Wiccan just told me I worship the devil. I was so upset that, Hollywood has turned voodoo into this evil, horrible thing, and it really isn't. It's a really beautiful, wonderful religion.
Yeah, it's closer to an animistic version of Catholicism than it is to devil worship. And listen, I'm not opposed to devil worship either, because I think maybe I'm not convinced the devil didn't get a bad rap. First of all, there is no the devil. I mean, there's Satan was an angel in the Old Testament. And even in the Book of Enoch, Satan was just a mid-level lieutenant. The archangel in charge of the rebellion, I think, was Azazel. So, and depending on who you believe, maybe it was Azazel, maybe it was Armin, but nowhere was it Satan or even Lucifer.
Exactly. And you got to Christianity in the Bible has been rewritten a gazillion times. And, religion, to me, Christian religion has been, it's man-made, you know what I mean? I don't think we were ever meant to worship in a church, but that's just me. But anyway, this is how I got into Voodoo and Santeria. I started to read and absorb, everything I could get my hands on, which wasn't much at that time. There wasn't a lot of books at that time. There wasn't a lot, and it's grown so much. I see so many people, if you go to like TikTok and you type in witch talk or voodoo talk, you'll see a lot of younger people embracing Voodoo and Santeria, and it's wonderful. I'm so glad to see that, because they're not having religion crammed down their throat by their parents or grandparents. They're now, I guess, embracing the religion of their ancestors, really.
So what's like the main tenets? How would we distinguish it from? We don't need to pick one major religion or mainstream religion, but what are the distinguishing characteristics of Voodoo and or Santeria? And then if you want, you can compare and contrast. Let's take it from 10,000 feet and then sort of maybe split it at, 2,000 feet, 2,000 feet.
Well, you all, in Voodoo, Papa Legba is Elegua in Santeria. You know what I mean? So it's like I said, it's like the same thing but different, because this group of enslaved Africans went here and had to do this to it to protect it.
Sure.
And then this group of enslaved Africans went here and had to do this to protect it. So there's differences there, but there's not. But again, there's not. Again, it's the same. It's the same dude, just a different name.
Right. So just like some people spoke Greek and some people spoke Egyptian, but it's the same stuff. And hoodoo is more. From what, and I never really done hoodoo, but hoodoo is more, there's more emphasis on Catholic saints in hoodoo. Hoodoo is sort of an amalgam-y thing that happened in Louisiana, where you have white people and you've got Native Americans and you've got the enslaved Africans with the Efa and the voodoo coming over and mixing, and then you have all this Catholicism in Louisiana.
and all of that mix. So there's a lot of emphasis on herbs and root work, what they call root work. A lot of what they call gree, which is, good luck charms or bad luck charms, whatever. Catholic saints. They do a lot of work with Catholic saints. So that's hoodoo. Hoodoo is something, to me it's voodoo Americanized, I guess. I guess that's what I always called it. But yeah, I mean, I will do whatever I feel like I need to do. And this is the main thing. If you take away anything from this interview, do what your gut is telling you. Go where it's pulling you. And that's what I did, and it served me well. Don't get into things for the wrong reasons. You see people getting into Voodoo and Santeria because they want to curse people. That's not what it's about. It's not about curses. Curses are a part of it, but it's not just about curses. There's some wonderful, lovely energy that you can tap into when you get into these religions. So, follow what is good for you. Do what's good for you. Do what feeds your soul. And don't take on powers. Don't get into things that you don't know too much about, because that's what I did. I stupidly, when I first started, I felt a very strong tie to Elegua. And even my padrino, who is like a priest, he told me he was doing a reading for me one day, and he says, "Oh, you and Elegua, you guys, you're very close. Even though he doesn't what they call own your head, he's not your sort of patron saint in voodoo, and Santeria. He's very close to you. He's guiding you." And I said, "Yeah, I know. I feel him. I feel him all the time." And so what happened one day, I didn't even have, because there's different, it's hard to describe, but there's different levels of initiation in Santeria. So what happened was I didn't even have that level of initiation to really speak to Elegua in a formal sense, but I went and literally, I'm not kidding you, I printed a picture of an Elegua, what they call head, whatever, but I printed the head and I put the picture up, and there was, at that time, and I think they took it down for good reason, but at that time there was a certain thing that you did to summon Elegua. So that's what I did. So I summoned Elegua to I don't know why I did it. I was just stupid and young, and I was just starting out, and I summoned him, and I was just like, there's like this little dance that you do and things that you say, and I did it, and holy crap,
it's an audio show, so nobody can see the little dance.
Yeah, it was this weird little dance, but I then went to bed that night, didn't think much of it. I did this little dance, I did this little thing, went to bed that night, and Elegua shows up in my room that night. And he is big, strong, muscular, powerful. The power emanating from him pinned me to my bed. I could not move. So I'm plastered to the bed, and I'm like, and he's standing there laughing at me like it's a big joke. And he's laughing. He's like, "Well, you called me. I'm here." And I was just like, and I couldn't even talk because I was so literally just plastered to the bed by this immense power radiating out of him. And I said, okay, I'm sorry. So he starts laughing. He kind of dissipates. He goes away and dissipates. And I'm like, oh my God, what did I just do? So
not his first rodeo.
I did it. Yeah, stupidly, I did it the next day. I did the same little dance, little thing the next day because I don't learn the first time. I'm a slow learner, so I did it again the next day, and that night, sure enough, he came back and I was pinned to the bed again, and he was like, "Well, what do you want?" And he's laughing, kind of looked like Mr. Clean, bald but very strong, muscular, and just laughing, and he just had a big old time kind of torturing me, but it was like a big brother kind of thing. It wasn't evil or anything like that, but he was really merciful to me because he could have killed me if he wanted to, but again, I was pinned to the bed. It was like, okay, I get it. And so now, I mean, here he is, Elegua is so present in my life that now every time I go through something, I pray and boom, things change. So, again, just be very careful. Don't get into stuff. Don't think you're a big shot. Okay. Don't think you can get into things and nothing's going to hurt you. I was lucky. I did not suffer, which I could have, if I I was just so careless and dumb. But you learn at our own pace, and so I learned not to do that anymore. So anyway, I just want people to be careful. Please be careful, and but go with your gut, and go and stay open. Keep your mind open, keep your spirit open. Walk out in nature and just talk, and you would not believe the answers that come to you. If you're Voodoo and Santeria, again, not evil. It's not devil worship. These are beautiful religions that I really wish people would embrace more, or at least just accept. Don't go with the Hollywood version of like, oh, it's devil worship, and then just write it off. Just don't do that. If you don't understand something, leave it alone. But Voodoo and Santeria and Efa are just beautiful religions, and they really help people.
And Efa is a West African religion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that would be sort of Ghana, Senegal, Ivory Coast, that part of the world, Cameroon, Nigeria probably. All right, so I want to ask a few, I'll just call them quick fire questions so they don't have to be quick answers. First of all, Elegua, who, assuming there's only one panoply of deities out there, who would Elegua be associated with in gods that maybe, my more casual audience might recognize the names? Or is that just, it's too artificial? Like, is he an Odin or Zeus correspondent? Is he more of an Osiris, Apollo? Or I mean, with the belief that there's only one actual panoply of these powered beings out there, I mean, you'd think that there'd be some corresponding name that the audience might recognize.
Well, I mean, again, there's a lot of different, I don't know how to say this. There's a lot of variations to this. So, Papa Legba and Elegua, they're the one and the same. But basically, there are seven African powers and saints, if you were, Orishas, or Loa. And, there's one overall, but yet, they are all working. I don't know how to explain this. I'm not very good at articulating this. So, just like we have saints in Catholicism, they're actually saints or maybe gods with the lowercase g. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So yeah, God with a small g maybe. But Elegua is or Elegua, people say differently, but he opens the doors to the other saints, the other Orishas. So you have to kind of petition him first to talk to the other ones. So he's very, very powerful. And there's different patakis, which are stories of his origin. So if you look up, Google Orisha patakis, you will find different stories as to how these Orisha, these saints, these spirits, these entities came to be and why they are what they are, why they do what they do. And so you got Oya, you got Oshun, you got Chango, Ogun, you got so many. So Ayamaya. And so you have a lot of these saints that if you need a certain thing, or again, when you're born, one of these saints, quote unquote, owns your head. Batala owns mine. So you can then be initiated in that house. Again, there's a lot of secrecy. There's a lot of stuff that I can't say. There's a lot of stuff that, I don't know. And there's a lot of stuff that I can't really articulate because I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to say and what I'm not supposed to say right now.
So
I can't reveal too much.
Is he sort of like a Hermes, like a Toth Hermes kind of parallel?
I don't know too much about Hermes.
Or is Hermes more of a Elegua parallel? Or is it neither? Am I misinterpreting entirely?
I don't know I've heard of Hermes, but I don't know.
Well, Hermes was like the messenger of the god. He was also the god of medicine and some other stuff. But he was he was the one with the wings on his feet and carry messages.
Like Mercury.
Exactly, Mercury.
Mercury.
Or more like Heimdall, who controls the Bifrost to Asgard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, again, I always tell people, look, if you want to learn about this, you have much more at your disposal than I ever did. So definitely look this up. If you feel, the need, go to a botanica. There's so many botanicas in every corner of the U.S. and the world too. But go to a botanica, you will find somebody who belongs to a house usually, and you say, hey, I want to study Voodoo and Santeria, or I want to do this, or I feel pulled to this. What should I do? And they should be able to help you. They should be able to guide you in the right direction and introduce you to their babalawo or whatever. But again, I can't really reveal too much, but I can just tell you about what I went through. And
Okay. Well, let me get to my
encounter that really got me.
Let me get to some of my quick fires, and then we can revisit or go back to your story. So, I think a lot of people, when they think of voodoo or Santeria, they think of probably two things. One, the James Bond movie Live and Let Die, which is probably more voodoo. And then Santeria, you probably think of the Day of the Dead, the Dia de la Muertes, and, the face paint and whatever. Is there, can you sort of explain to us in layman's terms how right or wrong those things were, and what is the correct depiction of what they were trying to do in obviously, obviously Cinco de Mayo and whatever is an Americanized holiday, and everything gets Americanized and commercialized, and obviously a James Bond movie is not historical fact, but they had to base things on. Tarot is a voodoo thing, because tarot is not only associated with voodoo by any stretch, but where do these things fit in together? If you can make an attempt at what I called a quick fire, which turned out to be more of a symphony.
So I think the James Bond movie, I think that fellow, he was dressed up as Baron Samedi. Baron Samedi is kind of like a Saint Peter. He kind of opens the doors. You meet him when you die. He opens the doors, to the afterlife. So I think that from what I remember, he was dressed up like Baron Samedi.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Hollywood has done the worst job showing what Voodoo and Santeria really is. They have yet to really depict it in a non-terrifying way. Everything you see in Hollywood is all about Voodoo and Santeria is all terrifying. It's all evil, curses. It's just awful. And so I encourage people that if you are even just interested in these religions, seek them out, read about them, but do it from a non-scary Hollywood mentality of, that these religions, they're religions, and they're beautiful religions. And there's so much more to it than just curses and nastiness. Religion in the wrong hands, in any form, any religion in the wrong hands is always bad. It's not, you know what I mean? People are going to manipulate try to manipulate these energies to do their own will. And that's the person. That's not the religion.
Sure.
So don't blame the religion for what a person who is, messed up inside wants to do to other people. They get into Voodoo and Santeria just to curse people, and that's terrible because it's not that. And they end up getting in over their heads. I've seen people that want to, they get into Voodoo and Santeria to win back an ex, or to break someone up that they love, and that person, it's unrequited. They don't love them, but they want to break them up because they don't want them to be together. And it's just like, no. You have to examine your own heart before you do something like that. Just don't do nasty stuff. That's all I'm begging people, because it will come back on you. If you, attack someone just because you're miserable inside, it's always going to come back on you. It always is. And so
karma's a bitch, right?
Yeah, that's what I tell people all the time. But I knew a girl that was really obsessed with a guy, and she lost her mind, and she was doing Voodoo and Santeria. She lost all her money because she was obsessed with this guy, and it wasn't the voodoo, it wasn't the Santeria, it was her.
Sure.
She didn't stop and say, okay, am I supposed to be with this guy? No. Okay, fine. And then work on herself to deal with that. She just became obsessed with this guy. He was supposed to marry her. He was supposed to get her a green card. and she did everything in the world, and it all ended up in disaster because she ended up getting kicked out of her apartment. I mean, she ruined her life because she did not have a clear head. And that's what I always tell people. Voodoo and Santeria are great, but if you don't come at it with a pure heart and a clean mind, a stable mind, you're gonna get into some bad stuff.
Is it like a Gaia-based, Earth-based, animistic religion at its heart, or something else?
I think so. I think it can be. Again, it all depends on what you're doing, but if
let's assume proper use, open heart. Let's not assume that someone's going to try and get back their ex or whatever. They're what you were looking for, just structure, comfort, and to find your truth and peace.
Yeah. I mean, if you want, and again, don't be disrespectful and treat these Orisha or Loa, these saints as cosmic bellhops. They're not cosmic bellhops. Mm-hmm. They're not here to fetch you things. You don't sit there and snap your finger and be like, I want this, I want that.
Blah, blah, blah. Not a genie.
Oh shoot, I want my ex back.
Not Aladdin.
You have to. Treat them like people. Treat them with respect. When you constantly say you have a relative or a friend that constantly comes to you, they don't call you, they don't hang out, they just always want to borrow money from you. And you're just like, no. After a while, you're like, no, go away. You don't want a meaningful relationship. You just want things from me. And so if you treat them like that, they will, you're not going to get very far. And so I would tell people all the time, these are living, breathing entities. They're beings. And so you treat them with respect. You can't just fall into this religion and start demanding things. I mean, it's just hideous that some of the things I see people do. So, I really want people to embrace Voodoo and Santeria, not the Hollywood scary version. It's not about curses. Please, don't. Again, when you approach all of this, approach it with a lot of respect, because there is so much power. I learned the hard way. There is a lot of power. And if you don't respect it, it will hurt you.
Well, let's take the one of the examples I did before. So, Day of the Dead obviously has been turned into sort of Halloween or whatever. What is Day of the Dead really? What is the proper, respectful, purpose of the Day of Veneration? What is it? I guess that's what I'm trying to ask.
I think people are confused maybe, and they try to assume that that's voodoo. I don't think that's voodoo. That's more of a Central American, Mexican, indigenous practice.
Okay.
Where they honor their dead. There's a day where the veil is thin and they can communicate with their ancestors, and so they honor them by giving them toys, food, drink, whatever it is. They're it's kind of like when you have that family reunion, but it's on a different level. And so Day of the Dead is kind of like that family reunion where you see everybody again. And so they go to the graves of their ancestors and their family, and they welcome them. They embrace that thin veil of where they can actually communicate. I'm assuming they say prayers and stuff like that. But again, it's been so Americanized. It's been, you know what I mean? And now it's Cinco de Mayo, and it's just like, oh my God, don't do that. It's I don't know.
It's not south of the Rio Grande Halloween where, the veil between hell and earth is thin and then the monsters come out. This is actually to commemorate your ancestors and spiritually bond and celebrate them.
This is not a white person celebration, of Mexican culture. This isn't it. It's let indigenous people have their celebrations and don't infringe on that. And I have such a problem with that, because you see white people walking around with the skull makeup, the skeleton makeup, and it's just like stop. This is not your culture.
Except that every Mexican restaurant and bar sends me texts and emails about celebrate this with us. So I mean, I mean, you can understand why some dope in Baltimore, which is what I am. I'm getting texts from every location of mezcal. Come celebrate Cinco de Mayo with us, and with the same Day of the Dead face paint icons and things like that. So. I mean, business is business, but
Well, I mean, indigenous people are taking back their culture from white people that think they're it's just like the white people wearing headdresses and red face and doing all. Oh, but I'm honoring you. No, you're not. You're mocking my culture. Stop it. And so I see it as pretty much the same way. And I'm all for indigenous, Central Americans, South Americans, Mexicans to, kind of reclaim that and say, okay, stop with the skull makeup. Stop with all of that. Stop. That's not your culture. Just stop. This is for me.
But important to know, not this is not voodoo. This is not hoodoo. This is not even really Santeria. But there may be some overlap because of your culture. Just because you are practicing
Santeria. Ancestor worship.
Right.
It's all ancestor worship. Yeah. I mean. Voodoo, Efa, Santeria, all believe that when your ancestors passed, because there was no heaven and hell, back then. So, when your ancestors passed, they were in a place where they could help you. And I remember I had a relative that passed away, and I had a friend who practices Santeria, and she said, "Oh, well, this person now can help you better than when they were on Earth. They're in a place now where they can help you better than when they were on Earth." And it rang a bell. I was like, oh, that's what it's all about. They told me that years ago, and that's what happened. So, ancestor worship has been stomped out, or try to be stomped out by Christianity, because again, you die, you go to heaven or hell, right? That's it. But no, ancestor worship is real. It's it's part of every major religion, really. I mean,
It's absolutely. I mean, I don't know if ancestor worship came before worshiping the sun and the moon, but I don't know which one was 1A or which one was 1B, but they're right there together. Going back.
Well, I mean, look at the Druids and Halloween. You know what I mean? Here's a time of year where the veil is thin, and good and bad spirits are allowed to pass through that veil. And so that's why we put pumpkins out to scare the bad ones away. You know what I mean? And we put sweets out to attract the good ones. So Day of the Dead, same thing. Again, ancestor religion. It's ancestor worship. It's that belief that your ancestors are coming back and are with you, and you can talk to them. And not very Christian, but it's that's what that is. And
I'm about to go with a stupid joke, but you ever worry that the demons have their own version of Big Pharma and they got Zyrtec for pumpkins?
No.
So the pumpkins are no longer allergic to pumpkins.
Right, exactly.
Or scarecrows. Yeah, ponder that one for a while. This is like the onion version of Garden of Doom. Listen, I have random thoughts. That's part of what makes the show interesting. But that's just what came to
discuss. This is how we learn.
But that's what just came to my mind. If the pumpkins probably don't really scare them, maybe they have some sort of allergy to gourds, and maybe they develop.
Well, I mean, this is the Druids and the Celtic people, the tribal people from the UK, from the British Isles. This is when they were in tribes before the Romans. When they were in tribes, this is how they made sense of their world. This is how they tried to understand the paranormal. You know what I mean? They had paranormal encounters, and with their limited knowledge of things, they were trying to understand the paranormal just like we're trying to understand the paranormal. You know what I mean? Each generation, each group, each whatever, we're all trying to understand the paranormal in our own way with what we have, our own sort of technology or knowledge. Sure. And back then, that's what they did. They were like, okay, there's, ghosts and stuff. So let's put out some scary looking gourds to scare the bad ones away. And let's put out sweets and good things for the good ones. Hey, you know what I mean? So
what would you think? Yeah, what would you think if it was 20,000 years ago and you're seeing the Aurora Borealis? Or you're seeing an eclipse or an occultation or a meteor storm or a comet coming down. I mean, of course there's some of that there. Oh yeah. Oh, but is now listen. This may not be related at all, and if it's not, say not related at all. But one of the more famous occultists in the last 150 years or so is Madame Blavatsky. Any relationship to what we're talking about at all?
I don't know about her too much. Who is she?
Well, apparently she was a Russian lady who was, despite.
Was she the blind lady that?
I don't think she was blind, but I think that she was rather fat, but she was still very popular in a lot of courts, and oh my God, I can't remember the guy's name. I want to say
Rasputin type.
Yeah, like a Rasputin type, but welcomed everywhere, and worked her way to the United States, and is like sort of like the forerunner of, let's just say, European occult, rather than things that go back millennia. And I want to say Aleister Crowley, but I think that she would have been dead before he was anything. But maybe he followed her teachings, or maybe they crossed paths when he was young. But she had a well-known American sponsor, and it's lost to me. I can't say the name now. Like Crowley and Galvini are coming to mind, but it's not either of those. It's certainly not Galvini. Anyway, other people will know, but I'm going to take it from the answer from your response. The answer is no, probably not directly.
No,
so.
no, I know about the I think it was she Russian or Czechoslovakian or Polish or something, but there was Baba something, but she was blind and she was a mystic. She was an oracle.
Maybe she was blind. Listen,
there was an older lady. People they'll know, but she was a blind lady. I think in Eastern Europe, and I don't know, but she was like a Nostradamus. She foretold a lot of stuff. She was really powerful. So I thought you were talking about her.
We might be. Obviously, I mean, I only know very little about it. I recently read a book that involved her. I've been hearing her name a lot recently. But again, if I rename this show the Lazy Curious Person's show, so that he doesn't actually have to do his own research, that would be a very accurate name. Because so I try and find people who know these things to tell me under the guise of entertaining and educating the audience. But it's really because I don't know something about it, but I'm too lazy to do what you suggest and Google. So, but don't worry, I'll get to someone soon enough, or probably, and usually one begets another.
Well, we can tell you more though. I mean, I feel like I'm not telling you much, but I can just tell you about my experience. But again, there's so much about the actual initiations in Voodoo and Santeria that are very very secretive.
It's like Masons.
I really wouldn't be allowed to tell you a lot of that stuff.
No, I don't want you to break any vow or obligation or something that would alienate you from.
I can tell you another story. I can tell you kind of a creepy story about Voodoo or Santeria. So my father was in the South. My father is was a retired law enforcement officer, and he had to. They were watching a house for drug dealing and all that stuff. So, drug smuggling actually. So they moved in, and they had everyone that lived in the house sitting on a couch. And there was, as usual, a shrine to, Elegua, or, different entities, different, Orishas, I guess. They were like little shelves, and there were little tiny statuettes of each Orisha. Okay, each saint. There was a bowl of pennies that belongs to Elegua. Okay, you don't mess with that. That's his. So my father, being the jerk that he is, went over and put his finger in the bowl and stirred the pennies up. Mm-hmm. You don't do that. You don't do that. That's a big no-no. That's stupid, boorish behavior. Which my father is known for. So anyway,
I think people need to know that you're saying this with love. You actually have a tattoo with a heart that says "Dad" on it. So as you said earlier, you're a daddy's girl. So this is you're allowed to call him that, but no one else is.
Yeah, well, I mean, my dad, I love him on a certain level, but, he is a jerk on many other levels. So this was many years ago, it's like 40-something years ago. But
I tried, Mr. Stevens, I tried.
But so what he did was he stuck his finger in the bowl and he stirred up the pennies. Of course, everybody who, knew about that said, don't do that. Oh my God, don't do that. Don't do that. He hates that. Elegua hates that. So my father stirred the bowl of pennies. And when you do a drug seizure on a house like this, you have to take pictures of everything. So, my dad and another person are taking pictures of the walls, taking pictures of the floor, taking pictures of the ceiling, taking pictures of the doors, windows, whatever. They're taking a picture of everything, and they took a picture of this shrine, which you were not supposed to do. You were not supposed to expose the Orishas in that way. That's a very personal space for someone who practiced Santeria, so you don't expose that with pictures, So they took pictures of it because, that's what these cops were doing. And so later on, they got the pictures developed, and the person that was with my dad that was taking the pictures freaked out because my dad said, where did those little statuettes go? And the guy that was there, he was like, I don't even want to see that picture. I don't even want to see it, because my dad was like, we took pictures of the shelves and the little statuettes of, because they didn't know it was Orishas. They just thought they were gods or whatever. Mm-hmm. But these little Orishas, these little statues, did not show up on the picture because they weren't supposed to be photographed. So my dad had this encounter where he literally, because this is what, 40, 50 years ago, he pulls out the pictures, because we used to get pictures developed. We didn't have, phones with, cameras on them. So my dad pulls out the pictures, and every single picture of that shrine, of that, where the little statuettes were, all the statuettes had disappeared from the picture. They would not allow themselves to be photographed.
That is creepy. So it's very
it's very creepy. So all the guys that had seen the statuettes in real life literally ran out of the office, because my dad was he was of course scared, freaked out, but my dad realized then, like, oh, okay, I better not do that again, because that gave him a bit of a fright. But he was also like, hey guys, look at this picture. Remember those little statues? They're not in the picture. And they all saw the statues, and they were all like, oh my God. So here you have a bunch of cops who think they know. They're big. They acting like they're big shots, and they think they're going to challenge this spiritual belief. They're going to challenge this thing called Elegua. They're going to challenge it, and it showed them.
Well, this starts to sound.
I love that story.
It sounds like the beginning of a horror movie.
Exactly.
And if only we knew a Hollywood screenplay writer.
Oh yeah, we need to find one. Oh, I'm that one, right?
Yes, that seems like the beginning of a horror movie. And the interesting thing is you're going to have crusty cops being the ones who are being stalked. So
yeah.
Well,
I mean, how many stories? I mean, there's a lot of stories out there with police officers, law enforcement officers who underestimated Voodoo and Santeria, and they ended up getting entangled in some stuff.
Well, I don't know those stories, but if only there was a Hollywood screenwriter who knew those stories that could incorporate it into
this.
I'll
write the screenplay. I'll do it.
I mean, it sounds like a pretty. I mean, because your victims aren't a bunch of dopey teenagers. They're people who are trained in battle and combat, and maybe some of them are war veterans. Just given the time frames that we're in. I mean, I don't know. So you could have sort of like a horror Predator version.
Well, that's what I want to do. I want to do another book, of law enforcement encounters with the paranormal, and not just like, oh, I went and looked at this. I was patrolling this haunted. Supposedly haunted, theater or hospital, and I saw a shadow. I'm talking like personally involved. Things follow you home, that kind of thing. Hitchhikers.
Well, the idea is recorded here, so she's asserting her copyright and her trademark right now. Her intellectual property is recorded in time, so leave it alone. And when your film is produced by Shudder or whatever, I just want a credit somewhere. And a bowl of my own protected pennies. That's all I want.
Yes, absolutely.
I just want credit, because I don't want financial success, because if I do, then I'm going to get that disease that I used to have, that keeping up with the Joneses disease, which is incurable in and of itself. And we'll get Bad Jeff back. So we don't want that. That sounds really cool. So all right. So this is another trite question that probably. The answer maybe you don't know, or maybe not related at all. But I heard Orisha, I heard 7. And I can't get past Orion, O-R-I, and 7. And Orion and the star system, Orion, the seven sisters, the Pleiades, Orion's belt, tied to so many myths, legends, lore. Is there any relationship there at all, or is it just...
Never heard of that one.
Oh, see.
I've never heard of that one.
Well, now you can Google the Seven Sisters and Orion and just, 7 in myth. Just 7.
There is a candle company that has really wonderful what they call fixed candles, which means they've been prepared for said thing, money, love, jobs, whatever. And they're called Seven Sisters of New Orleans. So they're really good. But I mean, maybe there is something to that. I've never heard of that. I don't know.
Yes, I think that Orion changed his name to Osiris. So, I know that West Africa and, what's now Egypt, and was then Egypt probably, aren't exactly right next to each other, but, they're not worlds away.
Yeah, and that's a cool thing. I mean, about religions, I love the evolution of religions. I love how a religion starts out as one thing by one group of people, and then it trickles down and it turns into this and this. You know what I mean? That's one thing that really drew me to Voodoo and Santeria was the history of it, was the evolution of it, was that it started out as Efa, and then it morphed and shaped and did whatever it had to do. And now we have this, you know what I mean? And who knows, in maybe 100 years, 200 years, it'll change into something else.
So much more I don't know about. Now I've learned I don't know about Efa. Now, so there's even more things I don't know about Orishas.
Yeah, this interview is just a brief synopsis of this thing. But I want people to get out there and Google to their Googler store, because you need to find out if you want to study alternative religions, go to the source. So start with Efa. And then, because some people strictly practice Efa. I mean, it's not a dead religion. It's very much alive. So people just practice Efa. They don't want to do the Santeria Voodoo. So they you know what I mean? And some people are just into Voodoo. They don't want to do Santeria. Some people are just into New Orleans Voodoo. I mean, it all depends on what people feel comfortable with and what they want to do. And folks, to me, I want to learn about it all.
Folks, I absolutely want you to do exactly what she said. But then I want you to get back to me, and I want you to come on my show and teach me about these things one at a time, because I don't want to research myself. If I haven't said it enough times, that's the purpose of the show. So I don't have to do any actual work myself, but I can still feel like a smarty pants.
We have to do the work for you and then educate you, right? That's what you want.
That's right. Okay. Help me. Thank you.
Okay.
and that's the guest, the audience, the world. Help me. Help me become the know-it-all that I want to be. So I thank you once again for coming on. As usual with these shows, I find out many things that I didn't know about, and just how little I know about the world. But it is a big world with 4.5 billion years of history, and then and how much of that is human, I don't know, or some variant of human, but that's a story for another day. And by the way, for those folks, I have some interviews scheduled in the summer with some people who are going to be talking about human origins. So cool. MJ, tell them where they can find you, what they can find, what they should be looking for, books, podcasts. Don't steal the screenplay idea, because this is going to be a great horror movie. I already see Ethan Hawke reprising his role as the good cop from Training Day, but being chased by ghosts, or not ghosts, by angered and offended Orishas.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the thing. To me, there is this one subject where a million people can put their own take on it. So you know what? Write that horror movie screenplay based on something that's kind of real and stuff that's happened.
I've got Denzel in it too, because he was in Training Day and in Fallen. So perfect.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, Ethan Hawke he's in Moon Knight. Have you seen him in Moon Knight?
Oh yes, he is in Moon Knight. So he's going to be So he's going to be perfect for this. This is great.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the thing, everyone has their own take on different things. Everyone will tell a story this one subject, they'll tell it 10,000 different ways. So you know what? Write that story. We need that story. You know what I mean? So write. I'm always encouraging people to write. Get your own version, because I have people so many times they go, oh well, I can't write that because there's always already a book about it. Well, you know what? Write your own version of this thing. I'm always encouraging people, please write, because we need that story, we need that movie, we need that TV show, we need that book. So for me, my own book, The Boogeyman Chronicles, you can find it on Amazon. That's the easiest place to find it. I have a podcast called The Boogeyman Chronicles. It's not much. I just have a handful of interviews because I did have some health issues, so I've kind of put everything on hold. But I am working on a website to have all that stuff together. So just do a search called The Boogeyman Chronicles, and you'll probably find me. You'll find the book and the podcast.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for coming back on again, and we'll keep in touch. Refer those Wicca to me. And maybe your Padrina or others as well. Yeah. But yeah, sounds cool.
I can get you in touch with anybody, so let me know.
I'm letting you know right now. Absolutely.
Okay.
So thanks again. Thank you all for listening. Hey, and some 5-star reviews. I'm sure this applies to MG's podcast as well, but we could use some 5-star reviews and written reviews. Share with friends and family and even enemies. And enjoy. And thanks, and we will hear from you again next week.
We've been talking for an hour. We just can't find the end. We won't understand each other. I wonder how it feels to fall asleep and love the one that's next to me. I don't know why I'm stuck around with you. I've been told I should go find myself again. You're taking my soul, everything I own, poison in my head. We fall down the more we keep trying, leaving us with scars. I've been told I should go and find myself again. Been told my soul, the more we keep trying. Been told my soul, and find myself again. We keep holding on for nothing. We both know we pretend we should go, but we keep trying to find a reason why we can't move on. I think we're scared to be alone. We had our times, but now I know that they are gone. Wonder how it feels to fall asleep and love the one that's next to me. I don't know why I'm stuck around with you. I've been told I should go